This is a three-part series of building a Dell server from the ground up into a Hyper-V standalone server running Windows Server 2012 R2. Part 1, we're going to go through the server and OS installation. Part 2 and 3 will involve the further configuration, eventually the role installation of Hyper-V. So for part 1, we're going to access the DRAC, the Dell Remote Access Card, to install and configure the server. We're going to use the lifecycle controller to configure the RAID configuration for the disks and to install the OS. And then we're going to use remote media to actually get the OS to install onto the local disk. So let's get started. Okay, so we're going to get started here. We have the Dell PowerEdge T320. This is the Dell Remote Access Card for it. It's already been IP'd through the BIOS. And so we're going to go ahead and log in. The default login is root and Calvin, C-A-L-V-I-N. Yeah, try it again. And it will ask you to change the default password, which you would definitely do for customer deployment. However, for the purposes of this demo, we're going to keep it. And through this view, you can view the status of the server, whether there's any hardware faults, temperature issues, anything of that nature. The server's off right now, so we're going to go ahead and start it. I'm going to start it through the virtual console. So this is the part that's going to make it look like we are sitting in front of the computer looking at a monitor. And we're going to just say run. Okay. So we can power it on, but what I'm going to do first, since we want to deploy the system, I'm going to say on next boot, go to Lifecycle Controller. It'll say this is going to be the selected boot device. We're going to hit OK, and now you can see that it's checked, so we know that we'll go there. The convenient part of this is that we do not have to worry about hitting a key at a certain time frame during the boot process to make sure we can get there. Sometimes with the virtual console, the keystrokes aren't as responsive, so you can sometimes miss it and have to reboot and start over. So this helps us avoid that. Some important pieces of software we're going to need for this process is the Windows Server media, typically is an ISO file, and a license key. We're going to need the Dell Server Administrator, the OpenManage Server Administrator software, and the Dell Software Update Utility, the latter of which will ensure that all the drivers and firmware are all completely up to date. To find that, we can see the lifecycle controller is online. To find that, we can go to the Dell Server Product Support page. This is for the PowerEdge T320, which is what we're working with. And I'm going to scroll down to, not firmware. Here we go, System Management. So the first one I've downloaded is the Dell Server Update Utility. Oops, sorry, 64-bit. This is about a 10 gig file, so it's a lengthy download. Make sure that you do that ahead of time. And then the next update, or the other piece of software, is the Dell OpenManage Server Administrator, which right here, the current version is 8.2. And I've downloaded those both here in this directory, ready to go. So now we're in the Lifecycle Controller. The DRAC is already configured. We can have the option of configuring the RAID, the disk array, or the RAID and go straight into the deployment of an operating system. In this case, that's what we're going to do. So we're going to select our RAID controller. It's the only one in the server. It's H310. This is going to allow us to set up one RAID array. In this case, it's going to be our local boot volume. So I'm going to select RAID 1. So there's 2 disks for that. And these two disks, 010 and 011, are going to be our boot disks. You can go ahead and see that we've got 4 additional disks in here. Those are going to be for the actual the volumes for the virtual machines running on here. Oops, I undeselected one. Okay, we're going to name this just boot disk. It's fine. I'm going to unselect this. We do not have a hot spare in this server. It's just a RAID 1 mirror. We'll just call it boot. You might not like the space. Okay, and this is our summary. We can see 2 disks we selected, no spare. We're going to be RAID 1. We can see it's about getting to be 136 gig volume. Hit finish. Yes. Okay. Now for our OS installation, we're going to select Windows 2012 R2. Okay, so it's finished that composing its drivers. We're going to do a manual install. And before we ask it to look for the media, we have to actually mount the media. So we're going to go to Virtual Media, Connect. We're going to map an image file. I'm going to pick my Windows 2012 R2 ISO image. Say map device. And it was able to find the mapped ISO image. So we're going to boot to the BIOS. It's going to load 2012 R2. Let me hit finish. And the Windows load screen started. Because it's pulling this file virtually across the network, it's going to be slower than if it was locally attached media. All right, and the setup has loaded, so we're going to just say next, install. See, the primary advantage of going through this process through the lifecycle controller is that the Dell drivers will be installed as part of the setup, as opposed to relying on the drivers contained in the Windows ISO being compatible with the Dell hardware and being able to get out, for example, the network driver to download and update other drivers. So most of the drivers in the Windows ISO are fairly common, cover most of the services out there, but this ensures that everything's going to be compatible and recognized when it first boots. Okay, so because this particular server is going to only support 2 VMs, we're going to go ahead and do Windows Server 2012 R2 Standard. If the client had a data center license, or this was going to be a Hyper-V server that supports several VMs, then we'd want to make sure that it was a data center server, which is licensed to host, I believe, an unlimited number of VMs. So we're going to go ahead and go with Standard with a GUI, as opposed to the Server Core installation. Server Core provides no graphical interface. It's purely PowerShell driven. In this case, so that we're going to use a GUI. We're going to accept the license terms. We're going to say custom, install Windows only. It sees the RAID 1 drive that we'd created. And we could create a partition manually, but we're just going to say next and let it auto create that partition. This drive is dedicated to just the boot volume, so there's nothing special to allocate. And it's going to begin copying files. It'll install them. It'll configure all the basic features. And then when it reboots, we should have a Windows OS to assign into. So we'll pause until that process is finished. So it's finished the file copy. It's completed the installation. It's just about to reboot. And we'll go ahead and restart. All right, and we've proceeded past the BIOS, and Windows is going to load. We can go ahead and eject the media here. Everything it's using is already locally installed. Okay, and on boot up, Windows will come back, and the first thing it asks you for is a password for the administrator. All right, and we have a Windows load. So we'll look at the drivers and install the supporting software.